What is a woman? Can you tell me that? If one person could tell me what a woman is. A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
Well, got him. If anyone can't answer a simple question, then they're an idiot. Anyhow, Jordan Peterson, simple question. Do you believe in God?
Okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say as the questioner, well, we already know what all those things mean, except belief in God. And I think, no, if we're going to get down to the fundamental brass tacks, we don't really know what any of those things mean.
We did it. We broke Jordan Peterson. What the f was that? All right, so we all saw what happened. If it's someone on the left who doesn't just waltz into your obvious trap of a question, but ask questions first, then they're a total idiot. But if someone on the right does the exact same thing, well, then they're the leader of the intellectual and philosophical movement. This, in a nutshell, exposes that when the right wing tries to police language, they are 100% unadulteratedly full of
That's grammar, that's language. You don't get your own pronouns.
None of the what is a woman discussion is remotely serious. They don't care about pronouns. These are the same people who'll be like, listen, a she is only something that has a vagina. And then they'll turn around and say, look at my country. I think she's great. The only way America is like a woman is that you keep trying to it and it keeps telling you no.
You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant.
Sorry, but that analogy doesn't hold water. I mean, there is a definition of she and her that can apply to someone who identifies as a she and a her. The problem is there is no definition of charming and handsome that remotely applies to Matt Walsh. And you do get your own prepositions. You definitely get your own proper nouns, like names. And I understand people don't have to call you by those, but if I don't call you by your name, I'm being an and that's all we're saying, is that if you don't call someone by their preferred pronouns, you're not like a protector of society. You're being an and we all know it's on purpose. You can wrap your feeble little mind around the idea that someone might have a penis, but identify as a she. You just choose not to for power, money, and stupidity. And don't tell me that like the Republicans are really there to make sure that words preserve their meaning and are used universally based on their original intent. False. How about woke? Woke originally just meant aware of an injustice. And you guys have taken every part of that meaning away.
They're destroying it with woke. When China looks at woke.
What this is a Missouri woke heat map. So all of these pinpoints that you see on the map are occurrences in which woke extremism was pushed.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of wokeness. Yep. Thomas Jefferson's Monticello estate, now accused of going woke. Sounds unbelievable, right?
I just thought that maybe Monticello would be protected from this disease of wokeism, but I was sadly wrong.
How dare they talk about slavery in the place where the slaves lived? Look at what they call it. They call it the Monticello estate. They can't even call it what it was. The Monticello plantation, because they can't handle reality. Not us. They can't handle reality. They just make stuff up. That's what they do. They make stuff up and then wear suits and go on Joe Rogan's show and think they can just tell lies. Well, I got news for you, buddy. Joe Rogan does have a fact checker, and sometimes he even checks facts.
Talking about hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Millions of kids have been on hormone blockers, really?
I'm sure someone's going to fact check me on it, but my guess is that we're into the millions now at this point. Yeah, that would be my guess.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers. That would be a big undercounting.
Less than 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
You are wrong.
The Media Matters will have fun with that clip.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh claims it was.
Yeah, they're going to point that out. Because you were off by millions. And the answer was in the thousands. Walsh also says that trans people essentially have a mental illness.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things.
Do we feel like Matt Walsh is the best person to really be commenting on other people's mental stability? It's like, how stable can Matt Walsh be if when someone approaches him and says, "Hi, I'm a she," the first thing he says is, "Show me the nads. I gotta confirm with the nads. I need to see which nads you got before I use a word." And it's not just adult nads, it's kids nads too. Matt Walsh, totally reasonable person, sitting there going, "Listen, I spent most of my career being against women's rights, but I'm a women's rights advocate now because I will not let this third grade intramural park league swim meet start until I find out if these children have a tiny dick or a tiny vagina." Matt Walsh, reasonable person.
Ever since the beginning of time, teenage girls have been getting pregnant. It used to be more common. The peak, ever since they started keeping records of these things, which they only started doing recently, like in the 20th century, but ever since they started keeping records, in 1957 was the peak for teenage pregnancy. 1957. Not 2009,
well, back
not
then,
today.
All of them were supposed to have kids. Like, that's when you had kids.
That's my point, okay? So to all of a sudden act like this phenomenon of girls getting pregnant at a young age that we consider young, 16 or 17, to act like it's a new thing is ridiculous. It's always been that way. Even biologically, and this is me just stating, I'm going to start by just stating facts. So fact number 1, it's not a new phenomenon. Fact number 2, in fact, it's a phenomenon that was more common earlier in history, and for the first 6,000 to 10,000 years of human existence, it was a normal thing. Fact 3, girls between the ages of like 17 and 24 is when they're technically most fertile.
Yeah. That was Matt Walsh advocating for the impregnation of girls as young as 16 because it's, quote, technically when they're at their most fertile, and a newly unearthed rant about how teenage pregnancy isn't the problem, it's unwed pregnancy that's the problem in society. Both things can be true. According to Media Matters, as the co-host of the Matt and Crank program, Matt Walsh defended political violence and teen pregnancy, shocked an intern with a stun gun, performed racist impressions of black men, and said that we, quote, probably lost our republic after Reconstruction. I'll get to that in a minute. Now, Matt Walsh is currently 36. Oh, for real? So, he said some of these things 10 to 12 years ago in his mid-20s on his YouTube channel, which is still up, by the way. Now, sure, we could go with the young and dumb thing for what Matt Walsh had to say. But if that's the case, and you're dumb in your youth, and you make bad decisions at the ages of 24 to 26, then how much more would those be when you're 16 to 18? It's weird how the issue of unwed pregnancies has been placed on black people by conservatives since the 60s as being due to our culture. With that said, currently, the fastest growing demographic to have a baby out of wedlock is white women, and at its current trajectory, that rate will be right around the same as black women's in like 2 generations. But we know that you're more likely to have an unwed pregnancy when you're poor and lack education. Those 2 things are not only impacted by cowardly men, sure, but when you have a baby while attending school, it kind of interferes with learning. Now, considering everything that was reported by Media Matters, it's a lot. Along with Matt Walsh's other recorded history of saying racist, sexist, ableist nonsense, he bet not claim victimhood. I don't think he will, but the takes of everyone on the Matt and Crank program is gross. This makes his question, what is a woman, even more weird and creepy. And to that, the answer is an adult female. I'm not sure of who's answering differently and saying otherwise, but I bet there's some avoiding this in his documentary that I didn't watch. However, all of this is a moot point about teen girls because Matt Walsh today recklessly throws around the term groomer. I guess I should say that people are allowed to change their minds over time. But did Matt Walsh do that though? Also, as I alluded to earlier, here's another excerpt of his. When the Mexican people come here, which is fine that they want to come as long as they come legally, which most of them aren't, but they bring with them, being that they're a different culture, a different race, and everything else, they bring with them an identity. And they also bring it to America. And so as the Anglo-Saxons, which were the original Americans, die off, our identity, our culture goes with it. Now, China and Japan and Korea and Vietnam and Egypt, all of those countries for thousands of years have got to keep their identity and their culture. They've been allowed to preserve it, whereas ours is dying off in less than 200 years. How he can forget to name the natives who lived on this land before Anglo-Saxons got rid of them, just so they could have a problem with others coming, legally or not, is beyond me. I forgot to add, the Matt and Crank program, along with Andrew Crank Murr at WZBH The Beach 93.5 FM, was based in Georgetown, Delaware. The show featured all of the worst of Walsh's bluster and bigotry without the production value given to his current work as a host for The Daily Wire, where he was hired in August of 2017. I'll leave you with this. The problem in society is that creepy blank like Matt Walsh have huge platforms from which to sell their bat worldview to millions. Back in the 40s, Matt Walsh's preferred era, guys like that had to get a sandwich board and scream at pedestrians on the sidewalk. Today, he has a podcast.